2 minutes, let us know who you are and what is it about this position of the mayor of Bristol that is so exciting that you are running for that position and not any other position. So just 2 minutes, give us an intro, who you are and why you're running for.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Well, hi, everybody, and thanks for inviting me along. I really appreciate your time and organising this kind of thing. It's really good to be able to reach out across the whole city and talk to people and listen. So just to sort of introduce myself, so my day job is as the chief executive of a charity called the Creative Youth Network. I took it from being a very small charity in East Bristol. We had sort of 4 staff when I first started back in 2006 to now it's one of the largest charities of its kind in the UK. We have nearly 150 staff and we work with about 10,000 vulnerable young people each year in Bristol and the kind of wider region. And I guess, one of the things I'm sort of most proud of is during austerity, despite austerity, we've managed to keep our youth services going in a way that many other cities haven't. We've brought money in, we work in partnership with lots of other organisations across the city, partly funding, partly working together and bidding together. And also partly by buying up buildings across the city and across the region as well. So many of you, I think, might know the station, which is the big youth centre in the middle of, or just on the edge of Broadmead, the old fire station that we bought and converted into Bristol's youth hub, I guess, that's used by many thousands of young people each year. So that's a little bit about me. And I guess I sort of got to the point in my life. I'm a doer. I'm a practical person. I'm sort of somebody who likes to, make a real difference. I'm not a sort of great pontificator and kind of wordsmith. I'm somebody who likes to see real change. And, I'd got to the point in my life, my adopted kids have grown up and moved out, and as well as being passionate about young people, I've always been passionate about the environment. I did an environmental science degree and ran the Friends of the Earth office in Bristol when I first moved here in the sort of mid 90s. So this felt like a sort of really good time, really important time, both to start tackling things like the climate crisis, but also the sort of inequality that we see in the city, the stuff that I learned and tried to tackle through my youth work. And just after Brexit, I kind of rejoined the Green Party again, thinking, God, we've got to do something. I've got to get back involved in really trying to make a difference. And for me, the position of mayor is perfect in that it sort of combines the chance to take those big issues that we need to tackle, inequality, climate change, but also make them practical. I'm not really interested in being an MP. I want to actually make a change. I want to see our carbon emissions reduced. I want to see young people doing better. I want to see our bus service be more efficient and on time. I want to see us build, council homes and that kind of thing. So for me, that's why I'm doing it. It's the perfect merging of my sort of passions and the idea of being practical and actually making a difference. So yeah, that's why I'm here, that's why I'm doing it, and enjoying it so far and meeting lots of fascinating and interesting people.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Sandy. Good to hear about you. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to ask you a series of questions. We've got lots of questions. We haven't managed to get through all of them, but I will ask you as many as I can in the time that we have with you. And these questions were submitted by our members, and so some of them are here with us. And so I'm going to ask them to you exactly as the question was posed to us.
Great.
Okay?
Yeah. So
I'm going to start with the first one. One of our members is asking, the reparations motion recently passed by Bristol City Council outlines a number of actions that need to be taken for the city to move towards reparative justice. These include creating a just economy through community wealth creation and centering the voices of African heritage communities. As mayor, how would you implement these actions?
So how to make a just economy. So I think, I have to pay tribute to what Marvin's done. Whilst we may have our disagreements and things, I think, to be fair to Marvin, the diversity of leadership of the city is very different, and that's a good thing. And you know, it's something I'm proud of as a city, and that's something I'd like to continue, because I think that representation is one of the key things. You know, again, working with the young people that I work with, many of whom are from Black or Asian backgrounds, just seeing people that look like them in positions of power, whether that's in business like you guys, or you know, in politics, in all walks of life, academia, is really important. And so that's the first thing. But then to come back to my sort of more practical nature, you know, I'm a great believer in kind of investing in communities and businesses to sort of help them flourish. And I've always been frustrated that looking particularly at the Black community, many of the charities there have never quite got off the ground. They're doing okay, but we need to provide that sort of core funding, that core stability that would really help those organisations to have a firm footing on which they can build and grow in the way that I've grown my charity. And I think that would do a lot, obviously, for those organisations, but also for the community as a whole. You know, in many organisations, like say Malcolm X or something, will then support other organisations, other groups to you know, contribute to their community. And then there's some really sort of other practical things. So, you know, housing, there's a lack of housing in the city. People are being pushed out of their communities because rent is rising. So I'm committed to building 2,000 new council homes. I think we've made the mistake of relying too much on the private sector to build affordable homes, and therefore that's something I'd look to do. Public transport too, for many disadvantaged communities. Actually, it's a block, you know, to get to the jobs and the opportunities and the training that's available. Our poor public transport system is a you know, is a barrier to young people and older people getting the sort of work that they need. So again, one of the pledges I'm making is to make under 21s give them half price bus travel, you know, again as a way of sort of getting young people to the opportunities that they deserve. So there's a number of other things that I can kind of talk about. Investing in communities. I want to invest in our high streets again, you know, so that local businesses, not just the city centre, but local businesses across the city can you know, flourish, creating local jobs for local people, and again bringing communities together. So again, this is the practical part of me, sort of coming up with the kind of things that I think will actually make our communities better places to live.
Sounds very interesting. Thank you for that, Sandy. The next question says, do you have any plans to increase taxes, direct or indirect, to help support local growth and economic expansion?
Oh, that's a good question. So you know, the reality of council tax funding, or the council funding, so much of it comes from central government, and it's been cut back and back and back. And so, you know, the council is 40% poorer than it was before the beginning of austerity. And that means we can do far less for communities, far less for business. So almost certainly council tax will rise by sort of 3 to 4% each year. But then there are other things that we can do. So we would like to put in, for example, what we call a corporate parking levy. So the way we can afford to pay for under 21s to get half price bus fares is to charge the big corporations, so the ones with sort of hundreds of car parking spaces. We can charge them £500–600 a year for those spaces, and that pays for young people, particularly disadvantaged people, to be able to get to work or to the training that they need. So again, the £10 million that we want to put into local high streets in communities, that's something, actually, I don't think it would need a tax rise. We can take it out of the existing capital budget. But those are the key things. You know, the other thing we've got is the clean air zone that is coming in, that will charge people. I think that'll be beneficial. There's potentially £17 million that I think should go into those city centre communities that are suffering from the polluted air at the moment. We should be reinvesting that money, you know, in active travel, you know, wider pavements, green spaces, and that kind of thing in the city centre.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Sandy. Moving on sweetly to the next question. So one of our members is saying, I have seen school signs proudly say 30% of students achieving grades, sorry, I'll start again.
Yeah.
I have seen school signs proudly say 30% of students achieving grades A to C. Clearly, that sounds like 70% don't achieve this far.
Yeah.
How do you plan to improve educational achievement standards in primary and secondary schools across Bristol?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, just to as a sort of little bit of a kind of preamble to that, the council has less and less power directly over education in our schools. More and more schools are becoming what's called academies, so they answer directly to central government, to the Department of Education. So it's more and more difficult to have a sort of direct control over you know, educational standards, curriculum, and that kind of thing. That's decided by the schools themselves, the support mechanisms and that kind of thing. So I think what the local authority can do is the work sort of on the edges of that for those young people who are really struggling in one way or another. And you know, that's something that I do in my day job. We support young people, you know, with extracurricular activities, youth clubs, training, help to get jobs. You know, those young people who are struggling at school need that extra support, whether it's homework support, whether it's you know, emotional, mental health support, that kind of thing. So one of the things I have said that I would do, you know, particularly as a result of the pandemic and the likely well, we've already seen a doubling of youth unemployment. It's far more than any other sector or any other age group in society, is to double the support for the next 18 months for young people that the local authority gives. So that is that kind of support for those young people who are close to leaving, sort of 50, you know, year 10 or 11, those who are struggling. We want to be able to make sure that they don't get left behind as the economy, you know, hopefully bounces back and new jobs are created. It's really important that we support those young people to get work, to get the maths and English, the mental health support and that kind of thing that they need.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sandy. Next question is about traffic pollution. So one of our members is saying, traffic pollution is often worse in economically deprived areas. This is despite the fact that these communities are the least responsible for causing this pollution. For example, the rates of asthma in the Lawrence Hill ward are some of the highest in the region. The proposed clean air zone may, due to the displacement of traffic around its boundaries, increase the problem. As mayor, what will you do to protect the communities bordering the clean air zone?
Okay, so you are right, and it's really interesting. I was in the do you know the Redcliffe flats, you know, the big blocks of flats by St Mary Redcliffe. So I was in there, you know, talking to residents, canvassing the other day, and the thing that consistently came up, you know, in almost every doorstep that we went to was air pollution. And people feel that they even, you know, particularly the elderly, those who are disabled, feel that there are days that they can't go out of the house because it's, you know, and so that's a real barrier. I think I have to say, one of the clean air zone that is coming, we called for it about 4 years ago, the one that is going to now be implemented. And I'm frustrated because I think if we'd announced it 3 or 4 years ago, businesses would have had a chance to adapt. People would have had the chance to buy a different car, save up, buy a different car. And also, more importantly, we would have had a chance to put in place some of the things like residence parking zones, better public transport around the city, you know, the park and rides that need to ring the city, because actually a lot of about 60% of the traffic that comes into the city centre actually doesn't originate in Bristol. It originates in South Gloucestershire and Bath and places like that. It's people driving into work. But now we've got to roll out the clean air zone in October legally. And so we're going to have to sort of almost retrofit, put in those things after the event. So there is going to be potentially a problem for the sort of first you know, couple of years while we put in better public transport. But that is a real priority for me for obvious reasons, for green reasons and equality reasons. It's we want to put in better public transport. And there's one thing that we would really aim to do. There's in the West of England Combined Authority has a huge road building budget, potentially hundreds of millions of pounds, really just to build one road that goes around the edge of the south of the city through greenfield sites, sort of around Stockwood and Whitchurch. Now that's a game-changing amount of money, right? That's the sort of money that could go into a whole load of new metro bus routes. It could make proper separated cycle lanes, you know, better walking routes. We can invest in local high streets, which mean people don't have to drive into the city centre to do their shopping in the first place. So that's a long-term solution. We should have announced the clean air zone 3 years ago. Then we could have done this stuff before. We're going to have to do it after, but I'm committed to doing that. And I think if we're ambitious, we won't see in the long run the negative impacts of the clean air zone in the sort of surrounding area.
Thank you, Sandy. Now, I should have warned you that some of our questions get a little bit personal. So the next one is a personal one.
Yeah.
So one of our members is asking, if you were to summarize your life, highlighting 3 key influences, whether situations or people, that have shaped the person that you are today, what would you say?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right.
Give me a second just to think about it. So, gosh, this is getting personal. I 2 spring to mind that I'm going to talk about. Then I hope the third one will come to me as I'm talking. Okay. So the first, of course, have to be my parents, right? And I grew up in a slightly odd environment. My parents were part of a sort of Christian group called Moral Rearmament, which was sort of, you might call it kind of borderline cult. It wasn't quite a cult, but it was a sort of, it was an interesting, you know, there's very definitely a kind of a sort of particular type of group thing. But the organization did sort of international peace building. So I would have people coming through my house day in, day out, from sort of West Indian cricketers, union reps from the Clyde, you know, Indian tribal chiefs from sort of northeast India, Tibet, and we had the Dalai Lama came to visit. You know, we had sort of kings and queens and you know, sort of community fighters from Somalia who'd run away from the dictatorship there. So I was sort of surrounded by this sort of crazy environment full of lots of different people, which I loved, I have to say. And it was always it was always good fun, and there was always interesting things happening and interesting people to talk to. So I think that's one of the things. I love meeting people. I love people. I love finding out about them and who they are, and these sort of, you know, the diverse experience that they have. Then I think the second one's also a slightly odd one. I'm going to say my ex-wife, who I was married to for a long time, still get on with very well. And she came from a very working class background. Her dad was a machinist in Rolls-Royce, union man. And I guess that's sort of, I learned from that, I think particularly from that and my day job, working with young people, how when life is difficult and you're not expected to succeed and you're constantly put down, that can really affect your self-confidence, your ability to step into a situation, to feel confident in a situation, to put yourself forward, to speak up in a meeting, to feel that you have a right to be in any given space. And I kind of really learned that through her and through my work. And you know, I've now thought of the third one. So the third one is my children, both of whom are adopted, and I won't say too much about, you know, their struggles and their background, but suffice to say, it was difficult, right? They went through difficult teenage years. They're great now. My son is a caretaker, and my daughter volunteers down at Horse World. But they went through some difficult stuff, which meant I went through some difficult stuff, and I had to learn to stop interfering and to just let go and let it run its course and walk the journey next to them, but not try and control it. And because controlling it tried to make it, in a lot of cases, made it worse. So that was quite personal. So I'm kind of just, yeah.
No, I loved it.
Good question. It's a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Politicians don't usually face personal questions, but
yeah, no, it's good.
Differently here at BPN.
That's the best question I've ever had. I think I'm going to say that. That's the best question.
Okay, well done for asking that.
Yeah, thank you.
So moving on to the next one. Get a bit serious again.
Yes. Okay. Right.
And by the way, thank you for that vulnerable share with your.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Now the next question says, a big thing is made about having more bobbies on the beat.
Yeah.
While policing is an important part, what steps are you taking to tackle root causes of criminal or antisocial behavior?
Right. Again, I mean, actually, it links to what I was just talking about. I think if people feel hopeless, then they will turn to crime, and that can come from family situation, it can come from poverty, it can come from disadvantage of all kinds. So I think there's the structural things that we need to. I've talked about building council homes to give, a home is the basis of a physical house, is the basis of a good life, and we have 13,000 people on the council house waiting list in temporary accommodation, right? So that in itself is a difficult thing. We need to put in place the right support and the early support around things like mental health. And actually, again, my own sort of service in my day job, that kind of those youth services that are preventative, there's activities and things for young people to do. People, I always find when people find that sort of spark inside them, whatever it might be, you might be a photographer or you might be an engineer or insurance salesman, it doesn't matter. Everybody's got something inside them that they can offer. And, people who are going on the wrong track, I've found that if you can help them find that, sometimes it's just trying new things, sometimes it's dealing with the really difficult stuff and counselling and keeping people safe from abuse and sexual exploitation, that kind of thing. So those preventative services have to be there. And I'm afraid, government has cut back and cut back and cut back. And I think that's why we're seeing a rise. Now, that's not something that the local authority can suddenly magic up a load of money. But what we can do is work with charities and companies to provide that. They'll bring in extra money that, we can work together to make sure that we have those wraparound services. And then other things, the other important thing is for people to have those role models that they can look forward to, look up to. And that's really important, that people come back into their communities when they've been successful, and talk about what they've done, how they've moved forward in their lives, how they overcame difficulties. Those are the most powerful stories that help young people to overcome their barriers, I think. And then, but we need to make sure as well that people are paid properly. I want to continue Bristol being a living wage city. It has to pay to work, it has to pay at least as well as doing a drug deal down the road. So those are all things, some structural, some just service delivery that I think will help and reduce crime and the causes of crime.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Next question. There have been a number of research papers that concluded that businesses are more likely to outperform their peers if they have ethnically diverse leadership. Therefore, what will you do to promote ethnic diversity on the boards of Bristol's businesses?
It's a good question, and it's very true. I think having, running my own organisation and, having diversity of thought, and I'm well aware that on my board of trustees, actually, it is diverse. My senior team isn't as diverse ethnically as it could or should be. But having that diversity gives the new perspectives, new ways of thinking that actually make a business run better. And I'm a great believer in creating great teams. That's how you're successful. So how do you do that? I think, again, having role models. I know there's Be On Board. I think Kalpner runs that or is part of that. And I know one or two others are involved in it who I can see on the call. You know, those kinds of things, both supporting people to step up and you know, be on those boards. I think there's an openness to that, you know, since the Black Lives Matter protest in a way that there wasn't before. So I think there's an openness, but also there needs to be support from the boards themselves and understanding unconscious bias training, and you know, that learning. Often boards can be very technical places, but actually when you get to know people personally, that's when that support can come and people can feel more comfortable in that space. So having that that support to step up, that mentoring when you're there and your first few meetings, you're like, oh, it's a bit nervous, no, not quite sure what's going on. That's important that mentoring is there through that process, and things like stepping up, I think, have been a very good program, and that's something I'd like to continue. I'd like to know more about Be On Board actually as well. I know Kalpner quite well, but I don't know so much about Be On Board, but I've heard good things about it and would like to know more.
Cool. Now the next question is going to get a little bit personal, and it might be our last question. We'll see how we're doing time. So next question says, self-care and well-being are an important part of our lives, but research has shown that many leaders take their own self-care for granted. How do you ensure that you as a leader practice self-care to set a good example for your team and the wider public?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I can tell you, just before this meeting, I went out for a walk. I live in Brislington, and I went up to, I had a sort of spare, I actually had a meeting cancelled, which is always quite nice when that happens. So I thought, right, I'm going to go for a walk in the sunshine. I don't know if people know it, but the Arnisvale Cemetery. So I went up through there, and there's a nice sort of 25-minute walk, and I just sat on the top of the hill, looked out over Brislington, and enjoyed the sunshine for 10 minutes. For me, exercise is a really good thing. I do a lot of cycling. I love my cycling, so being physically fit is important. Getting a good night's sleep is really important too. And seeing friends and family, which has obviously been more difficult over the last year. But yeah, for me, those are the things that are important, and I think it's important to talk about that as a leader, you know, in your meetings, in a sort of wider world, and say, yes, I'm you know, I'm coming in late today because I worked till 10 o'clock last night. That's absolutely fine, I think, and it's how I've always run my organizations, and you know, whilst everybody works hard, they feel that they've got the flexibility that if things are tough, they can just step back for, you know, an hour or two or a day or two, and yeah, it works.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that, Sandy. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We are going to let you go. That will be the last question I'll ask you, because if I ask you the next one, we will definitely overrun.
We'll definitely overrun.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will leave it there. But before you go, let's just give you a nice big wave to say thank you for joining us and spending your evening with us.
Thank you. And do, you know, from an election point of view, do keep an eye out. I've got my website, sandyformayor.co.uk. You can see all our policies there. And as well, feel free to email. You know, I'm happy to answer questions on any issue that you want to throw at me. And believe me, I've had everything.
Yeah,
so, you know, so yeah, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer. And thanks.
We will email those questions through, because we didn't actually get through all the 17.
Yours, fine. So if you want to email those through, it's sandy@bristolgreenparty.org.uk. So stick them through, and I will answer them as quick as I can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Sandy.
Okay, cool. Thank you all. Nice to see you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye. And that was that. How was that, guys? How was that? Is it useful? Is it helpful? Are you learning? Are you learning lots?